Hello everyone, this is a recorded video of CLO India's first online workshop. This workshop will be in parts. This video will include import-export, drafting and modifying patterns. The resources that you need to download are given below. Before we start, I would like to guide you on how you can change the unit settings in CLO, which is very essential when you work with 2D patterns. You can find this option from the settings option in the menu bar. From the user settings, you can open the user interface. You will find a unit system drop down. If you wish to change the unit, you will have to restart CLO to have the changes applied. Now we can proceed with drafting a sleeve in CLO. In the resource, a basic bodice block along with the drafting guidelines are available. You can open the basic bodice. Let's first simulate this on an avatar. We will be using a Missy Curvy size 10 avatar throughout this workshop. You can load an avatar to the workspace and also apply the size 10 preset. You can now move the back borders away from the front borders to create a space in between to draft the sleeve. The sleeve measurements and the guidelines are explained in the drafting guidelines document attached below. You need to first create a rectangle with sleeve length as height and bicep measurement as width. The height of the rectangle that you are going to create will be 55.8, that is the sleeve length, and the width of the rectangle will be 33.02, that is the bicep width. The top pattern outline can be uniformly split into two parts to create the center line for the sleeve. You can use your edit pattern tool to right click on the top pattern outline and you will find the option to uniformly split it into two parts. Let's now offset an internal line at the cap height, which is 14.6. This measurement is also given in the drafting guidelines doc. To offset an internal line, you can use your edit pattern tool, right click on the outline from where you want to offset, and then you input the particular measurement in there. To mark the elbow line, you can select both the hem and cap line and right click to distribute internal line between these segments. The final position needs to be 1.9 centimeters above from the exact center. So you can calculate the measurement and enter it. So you can reduce 1.9 from half of this and enter that measurement in there. If it comes in the opposite direction, you can reverse the direction as well. From now on, we will only be working on the 2D window to increase the area of your workspace and also to have a better visibility of your 2D patterns. You can now click on the 2D window icon on the right hand side bottom corner. With the Edit Pattern tool, you can select both the shoulder lines to match them up. You can check if there is any excess on the shoulders. For that, you can right click on the line where you wish to match them up and choose to match up at the center option. You can then drag and select the complete armhole to have the measurement. When you have the complete measurement of the armhole, you can divide it by 2 and add 0.64 centimeters with it. That will be your cap length. Use the internal line tool to create an internal line starting from the sleeve shoulder point. Draw till you get a smart guide colored in pink in line with the bicep marking. Before you complete bringing it closer to the value, in this case closer to 22.285, and right click to enter the exact measurement. So before closing that pop-up, you can switch on the mirror creation option on y-axis so that you just have to create it on one side. The other side will automatically replicate. And then you can extend your line till the hem, and before you leave the point at the hem, you can right click in line with the hem to mark the position 5.08 from the pattern outline. So if you right click, you will get an option to enter the position from the pattern outline. You can enter 5.08 in there. Now you can see that the pattern outlines are in matching the new bicep width which we have created. You can use your edit pattern tool to drag and match the new point. You will notice that the pattern outline will snap to the new points as you move and will give a smart guideline. If you don't get the smart guide, you can right click on the background and switch on the smart guide and snap to pattern option. So these guides are very helpful while you're working with patterns or editing them or modifying them. Okay, now select both the internal lines and extend to pattern outline. Let's now create the curve. Split the segments into 4 uniform parts. You need to do it for both the front and the back. And you need to square out lines from these points that we have created. The measurements of the lines that needs to be squared out or in are given in the drafting guidelines. For the first point on the front, you need to square out 1.90 centimeters. For that, you can right click on the point and add a perpendicular line at the local axis. The point lies on a diagonal line, that's why you will have to choose local axis. You need to reverse the direction if you want it in the opposite direction. We have to do this for all the points. You can refer to the image in the drafting guidelines document to know more about the measurements. When you have all the lines squared, you can either use a French curve to draft, or you can also draw with the internal line tool in CLO if you're very experienced with pattern making. In this workshop, we will be doing it with the French curve, so you can import the French curve from the resources. The French curve is created in CLO and it was saved as a zpack garment file. You will have to add it to the existing project. Once you load, you can lock the sleeve pattern so it doesn't interfere while we work with the French curve. You can also change the surface to opaque so that you will be able to see the points and lines easily. Now we can place the French curve to match the first 3 points. Rotate with the small circle on the top. You can now create a copy of the French curve and flip it horizontally and vertically, then match the other 3 points to complete the curve. We can also maybe move the French curve behind the sleeve so that when you draw on the sleeve, it does not accidentally get attached to the French curve. Right click on the French curve and then change the order to back. So now you can use the French curve as a reference and use the internal line tool to start drawing the armhole curve the same way how you use a Bezier in Illustrator. You can press Ctrl on your keyboard to give anchor points and curve the line that you're creating. Now we can select both the French curves and flip them to the other side so we can complete the other curve as well, and individually rotate them to match the points. Then you can draw the curve as the same way how you did for the other. Now as the draft is complete, we can now do the extraction from the working pattern. You will notice that your pattern outlines are locked. You can unlock them from the right click on the background. Now you can use the trace tool to select the boundaries and trace it as a pattern. pattern needs to be cleaned up. Let's first delete all the unnecessary internal lines and baselines. You can right click and unlock the baselines. Also lock the pattern outline so that it does not interfere when you select the internal lines. Now we can drag and select the internal lines and the baselines and delete them. You can trim the internal lines to the pattern outline and convert them to baselines as they will remain as a reference. Now let's walk this pattern to add notches. You can find the walk pattern tool from your 2D toolbar. Select the tool and start walking the pattern from the lower armhole point. Left click on the point on the sleeve and drag the arrow to click and start from the front borders. When you reach the front dot, right click and add notch on the walked pattern. You can press enter on the keyboard to stop walking. Now you can use the notch tool from the toolbar to select the notch. Right click, this will allow you to add a segment point at the notch. If you give a single left click on the notch, you will also be able to find a lot of options in the property editor to edit your notch in terms of shape or the position. You can now repeat the process with the next armhole segment towards the shoulder point. Once you complete the front, start from the back lower armhole point and add a notch. The segment between the two top notches have the cap ease. You can use the notch tool to split them equally to front and back. Right click in between the segment and uniform split. You do not have to use the add point or split line tool for this. You can do it with the notch tool itself. Drafting the sleeve is complete.
Hi, I am Manisha and I'm going to show you how to convert a basic block into a basic short block. So the first thing that we need to do is select our shoulder line over here, and I'm going to split it into two equal halves. Using the split line, we are going to select the uniform split, and the number of segments will be now 2, because we are dividing this one single line into two equal segments with a point at the center. And why do we need this point at the center? Because we need to open up a shoulder dart over here. So before going any further, I would uh, require a apex point reference over here. So the intersection of these two dots gives me the apex point. So I'm going to right click on the background and I'm going to unlock all baselines. Now these purple baselines that we have, I'm going to right click on them and add guidelines along the points. Similar for the base start over here, right click on the baseline and add guidelines along points. And if I zoom in and show you, we can see there is an intersection of these two lines, and that is going to be our apex point reference. So now I am going to right click and again lock all baselines so that it doesn't interfere with our selection going forward. And with the same tool, I'm going to select the outline of this dart on the armhole, right click and rotate. And after selecting that, I need a line as a reference to where I want to create my dart, which is going to be the center point. And you can see there is a line which moves here and which indicates where I want to place my dart. So I want to place my dart exactly at this intersection, and that is why I created this apex point reference over here, and I'm going to place it exactly at the center like this. Now I need to click on the pattern part that I wish to rotate. I will click here and it gets highlighted in yellow, and I am going to rotate it. While I'm rotating it, if I right click, I will get this option, and this option helps me decide and enter the precise values for my close dart, which is the dart I'm closing, and the dart that is opening, which is the new dart that I'm creating. So the closing dart, I am going to enter 1.27 centimeters and click OK. And the last step at creating a dart is going to be where I want to end my dart. So now I am just going to end it approximately. So this is my apex point, and I want to end my dart 2.5 centimeters or approximately less than 2.5 centimeters away from the apex point. So I'm going to place it approximately here, and you can see we have created a shoulder dart on the shoulder line. Now we do not require these guidelines, so you can simply click on them, right click on them and delete all guidelines. And the changes are now seen in the 3D window as well. And if I simulate, you can see the changes gets simulated along with the block. Okay, so now the whole purpose of creating the shoulder dart was that we wanted to increase the armhole width and also without influencing the shape of the armhole. So I'm going to select this point over here, which is the lower armhole point, and I'm going to move it slightly away from the current point and right click. And when I right click, I get this option where I can enter the precise values for the distance that I want the new point to be from the current point. And also I can decide it along the x-axis and y-axis. So I want it minus 1.9, which is 1.9 away from the current point, and minus 1.9, which is minus 1.9 below the current point. I'm going to click OK, and now you can see the armhole shape is maintained, but we have increased its width slightly. After doing this, we do not require this shoulder dart anymore, but we need to ease this excess over somewhere else. We need to balance it out. So I want to balance this shoulder dart at the waist. So for that, what I need to do is I need to select the waist dart, right click and rotate. I'm going to zoom in and just click over here so that we can get a intersection. And now I'm going to click on the pattern part that I wish to rotate. Click on the pattern and you can see we can rotate this part, and I am going to merge it along with the first line of the shoulder dart. And when I click, the shoulder dart will be completely closed, and we have a waist dart that has balanced out the excess of the shoulder dart. When I simulate, all the changes have been made, and now we can go forward. So now we don't have a shoulder dart and we have a waist dart, and this waist dart also we do not require. So I'm just going to select this waist dart and right click and delete it, and then select this point over here and slightly move it inwards 0.64 centimeters so that it's a straighter line. This is a optional thing which you can do, or it's not required. And then I am going to click on this point over here of the center front and move it upwards. So while I am moving it upwards, you can see it turns into a pink line. This also, and this horizontal line as well. This is an indicator that your line, this point over here which I was moving, is equally in line with the point that is over here. So this is a straight line, and this pink line on the vertical is also straight along the center. Now we have a straight line over here, and in the 3D window you can see that the sewing on the of the dart is still over here. So we need to click on the edit sewing tool and we need to delete the sewing. I'm going to delete it, and then I am going to simulate the bodice, and we have a straight line at the hem. And now we can simply select the edit pattern tool and extend pattern offset, and we are going to increase it by 17 centimeters, and I'm going to click OK, and we have a center front which is going to be create the front of the shirt basic block. For the back pattern, we need to click on this point at the across shoulder line. This baseline over here is your reference for the across shoulder, and the point at the end of the baseline is our point that we want to move away from the back, center back. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to enter 0.69 centimeters, and I'm going to select the lower armhole point and move it away from the center back, and it's going to be exactly 1.9 centimeters away along the x-axis and minus 1.9 centimeters along the y-axis. And now we can see the armhole shape has been increased, and now we can just select this waist dart and delete it. Once we've deleted it, we can simulate it, and you can see the sewing is still there for the dart. So we need to use edit sewing tool, and we can just delete our sewing, and you have a basic shirt block. But to complete it, we need to increase the bottom hem. So we can again select the hemline, right click and offset pattern outline, and it's going to be 17 centimeters. And here we can also select how our pattern outline is going to be, so we can extend it as a mirror as well. So you can see we can mirror it, and it will be the mirror shape of the hem that we have. And I'm going to click OK. Now since this curvature is very steep, we can just click on this point and move it slightly, which is going to be 1.27 centimeters away from the center back, and click OK, so that we have a slight curve. And similar for the front, I'm just going to click on the waist point and move it towards the center front, and again 1.27, which is a very slight in. So now we have the curvature on both the side seams of the center front and the center back. And when I simulate my pattern, you can see the changes have been made, and only the sewing is not complete. So once you complete the sewing, you can just use the edit sewing tool over here and complete the sewing like this. and you have your basic short block. For that, I need to use the edit pattern tool again, and I want to select this entire line. So there is this point over here which I can delete because it's unnecessary, and I can now select this entire front, center front, right click and offset as pattern outline. So when you do this, you have the option of extending it, your pattern outline, and right now I'm going to place it 1.27 centimeters because I want to, it is exactly the half of the placket that I want to create, because as we know, the center front is the center of your placket. So 1.27, and then you can also decide the side segment type, which is going to be extend. So it's not a curved line that you get over here, it is this line that I'm talking about. It is exactly an extension of the point over here. So I'm going to click OK, and then now we have this I'm going to this new pattern outline that we have. I'm going to right click on that and offset as internal line. Now the offset that I'm going to create is going to be the total width of my placket, which is 2.454 in my case. After I've done that, I can now I can continue buttoning my shirt, or if I want to create a double layered placket, I can now click on this one of these patterns, right click and remove linked editing, and using the edit pattern tool, right click on the internal line and cut and sew. This will separate my pattern from the placket pattern. I'm going to click on the placket, right click and layer clone under. When I do layer clone under, this will give me an option. This will give me the placket with layer, and I'm going to show you in the 3D window as well. So this is the original placket and this is the layer clone under, and all layer clone unders happen automatically with the sewing underneath. So this is done, and now if you want to create markings for your buttons, that is also possible, because now we have the option of creating base lines. So I'm going to just long press on this button over here and select the base ellipse option, and using the base ellipse option, the first shape that I'm going to place on the placket is going to be the marking for the first button that I create. So if I double click at the center line of the placket, I can I can change the width according to diameter, radius and circumference of one. So you can see the shape is changing, and then I can also decide the placement of my first button. So it's going to be 3. For me it's going to be 3. It can be it can vary according to your requirement, and then I can also decide the interval between each of the different shapes. So I want the distance between each button to be 7.5 centimeters, and now I can also replicate the shape. So the number of shapes I'm increasing is and you can see it's moving horizontally. So if I want to place it along the placket, I'm going to change my angle to 180 degree, and I am going to increase it like this, and I'll click OK. And now you can see we have created our button markings, and when we export this pattern out, you will have these button marking placements for easier placement of buttons. Now I'm going to move forward and create a collar with a collar stand. For that, the first thing that I would require is the width of the neckline. So I'm going to use my edit pattern tool, click on the center front. I'm going to select the neckline of the front and the back, and I have my values over here, which is 21.88 centimeters, and you can see the values here. Whenever you click any lines, the total value is going to be here, or you can look at the values up at the property editor as well. So now I have the total width of my neckline, and I'm going to use the create rectangle tool and create a rectangle whose width is going to be 21.88 centimeters and the height is going to be 3.49, which is a standard measurement that we take for collar stand. After creating this, let me just place it here so it's easier for me to edit it. And now I need to mark the shoulder point on the collar stand. So for that, I would require the measurement of my back neckline, and it is 8.96, and I'm going to place this value over here on the collar stand. So for that, I need to right click and split the line, and I can enter 8.96 here, and you can see the value is appearing here, and then I press OK and I have a point here which shows me where my shoulder point is at. Now since this is my center back and this is my center front, I'm going to select the center front point and move it gently up. Right click and I need to move it up by 1.27 centimeters, and this is the shape that I'm going to get. And using the smooth curve tool, I am going to curve this point like this, and now using the edit curvature, I am going to slightly pull it out and curve the line. Now I have my collar stand. Now I'm going to create the collar pattern since we've already created the collar stand pattern. So again, going back to the create rectangle tool, I'm going to select that and click on the background, and the total width over here is going to be 20.61, which is exactly total neckline minus half of the placket value, and the height of our collar can be 5.08 centimeters. After I create this rectangle pattern, I can place it on top of my collar stand because we would want an intersection, and we can match both of these patterns, and we would require the collar stand pattern option is selected, and I'm going to place it on top of this, and both of these patterns are intersecting right now. And if I want to see the pattern that is behind this pattern, I can just go over to the show height menu and go to the opaque surface, and I would be able to visualize the pattern on top or bottom. And I can also change the order of my patterns here in close. So if I want to send it back and make changes to the collar stand, I can do that as well. But right now I need to make changes to the collar pattern, so I'm going to bring it to the front, bring it forward, and now I am going to mark the shoulder point on the collar pattern, and that is going to be 8.96. Again, I'm going to go here and select the add point split line tool, right click and enter the values. You can see both of the points are intersecting on the collar stand and collar pattern. And after doing this, I'm selecting the point at the center front and moving it towards the center back by 1.27, and then below by 1.27. Okay, so now I would require a curvature here on the collar pattern. So if I click on this point and convert it into a curve, you will notice that the shape over here changes, and this would create an undesirable shape for the collar back. So I would not do this. I'm undoing my editing, and I am going to add a point over here using the add point split line, and I'm going to divide this into two uniform parts. So I have created one of the points over here, and now I can click on this point and convert it into a curve. So this will help me maintain the shape over here, because we do not want this to turn into a curve, but we want the line beginning from this point to change into a curve. So we have the straight line, and then it slightly gradually changes into a curve. After making this change, now our collar pattern is complete and with the collar stand. And since we need to fold the collar, we would require a reference line slightly above this pattern outline. So for that, we can select this entire bottom line, right click and offset as internal line, and we can enter a 0.75 distance. We can place a internal line over here. So whenever we are sewing our uh, shirt together, we can use this line and use it for fold arranging and folding the collar into a proper collar. So this completes our basic shirt block.
We will now open up the final garment. Let's now go through the import and export options. To begin with, let's first prepare this pattern for export. You can see a lot of unnecessary baselines, internal lines and points. Let's first delete them. To delete the baselines, you can lock your pattern outlines and unlock your baselines. You will find these options when you right click on your 2D window. You will have a lot of these baselines. When you draft a pattern, you can delete them. At some point, your baselines might not be extended to your pattern outline. You can right click and extend them to pattern outline. In this pattern, because you have both the sides of the pattern and the symmetric copies in it already, before you export, you can cut the pattern in half and delete one half of it, so that when you export, you will only have one half in the DXF. Now let me show you how to add annotation. For annotation, we have a specific tool. You can find it from the 2D toolbar. You can click inside the pattern and type in the annotations. To complete the annotation, you can just give another click inside the pattern. Now for pattern symbols as well, you also have options include to add pattern symbols. It's in the same drop down as pattern annotation. You can just click on any internal line or pattern outline to add a symbol. You have the properties to flip it or change the shape in the property editor or rename the shape. I'm just converting the unnecessary points to curve points now. Curve point will retain the shape of your curve, but it won't be visible as a segment point. You can also add notch to the points where you don't find them. Now let me show you how you can add a dart cap. To add a dart cap, you can actually use the edit pattern tool to select both the legs of the dart, and right click, you will find the option to shape the dart cap. You will get two lines, one the black one and the blue one. You need to match it with the points. Don't worry if you're not able to match it with the first 2 points. You will have to move all the points to get it right. Once you're done, you can just click on enter. I'm just doing it on the other side as well. Okay, now let's add seam allowance to the garment. For seam allowance as well, you have a separate dedicated tool. You just have to click on any segment and you will add seam allowance to it. In the property editor, you will find the width. So you can decide what width you need to give the seam allowance of. If you want to add it to the dart intersection, after applying it to both the dart legs, you just have to click on the intersection point, and from the property editor you can choose the dart shape, the cap shape. So you have the seam allowance as well there. To any of the segments that you want to add it to, you just have to click on all the segments and add in the measurement. I just quickly added it to a few points. To edit the grain line, you can use the edit texture tool. Just once you select the texture tool, you will see the grain lines marked on the pattern. If you want to rotate these grain lines, you can just click on the pattern and either freehandedly rotate it. While you rotate, if you press shift on your keyboard, you will get snap. It will snap to the 180 or 90 degree. If you right click on the pattern with the edit texture tool, you will have options to align it to x-axis, align it to y-axis, or align it to parallel to the selected line. If you want to be very precise about the angles, you can actually select any pattern, and if you look at the property editor, you have an option grain direction where you can enter your exact angle measurement. Let me show you how you can plot this. So if you go to the user settings, in the others option, you will find a network plotter setting where you can give the IP address. Right now, because I don't have one, I'm just going to close it from there. And then from file, if you give the plotter option, you will be able to plot it directly. Because I have not given any valid address, it shows an error notification. But when you open the plotter option, it will take you to the print layout mode. So you have, if you right click, you have the nesting option. With the nesting, you can decide how many garments you want to place on the marker. You can increase the number and nest the garments, and then when you're complete, you will have the number of patterns placed on the fabric roll width. Let me also show you how you can export it directly as a DXF. From file, you can export DXF patterns. You just have to choose the path where you want to save it and then give the save option. After you click save, you have the export options where you can decide the scale in which you want to export it out. If you want to rotate the patterns when you export it, and you have different options like export without grading. If you have grading, you can eliminate that. Export without baselines, duplicate notch to the seam elements, which I have ticked right now. Swap cutting and sawing line, which is to switch between the seam elements and the actual outline. Once you export it, when you import, you have the option to open it or add it to the existing file. You can choose the scale which you've created it in. Make sure that you choose the same scale which it was created in. Then you can give do not rotate. You have import pattern and rotation option, which you have to tick on. And you also can have options to auto trace the internal lines, swap the cutting and sawing line, which is necessary if you are importing patterns with seam elements, so that CLO will automatically remove the seam elements from the pattern. And there is auto distribute if you want to have the patterns distributed along. Then you also have optimize curve point option. In case if you have a lot of curve points, it will optimize the curve points, number of curve points. If your curve does not load, if any place like a neckline or the sleeve armhole does not load really well, then you can switch on this option to try if it will come out fine. And then you can click OK to load your pattern. So this was the pattern which we had saved before.